Hello, everyone, and welcome to Is Dyslexia live show. What a wonderful, awesome day it's been today. It's been such a beautiful day, and I went out for my walk as usual, my lunchtime walks. Absolutely fantastic. Welcome to our live show. Today we have an amazing young man who's going to join us. We have the lovely Dharmesh, who will be speaking about his studies with dyslexia. He's studying medicine. He graduates in July to become a doctor. And it was a pleasure meeting him. In fact, I met him at one of the all-party parliamentary talk with the British Dyslexia Association, funny enough. And I was really moved with his story, and I think it was really great to invite him to come to our live show to speak to us about the journey of studying and when he was diagnosed with dyslexia and so forth. But before I dive straight into the live show, I'd like to remind our viewers who I am and what I do at Is Dyslexia. So my name is Elizabeth Tetchy. I'm the founder and the CEO of Aspire to Inspire Dyslexia CIC, based in Wandsworth in London, to be precise. And we run this live show every Monday, except the bank holidays. And we bring into your homes really inspiring stories about the individual with dyslexia who are really thriving and making a big impact in other dyslexics' life. I can use that word because Dharmesh is an exceptional individual who has gone through the education system having dyslexia and has worked his way up or within the studying remit to become a doctor. I'd like to bring him onto the show, but before I do that, I want to thank our funders, Equip, European Social Fund and Educational Skills Funding Agency, for sponsoring or funding our live shows. I would also like to say thank you to the Community Foundation for the study skills support funding that we've currently received to support the community. And I might as well just mention a few things that we are doing. So we're currently running a study skills, one-to-one study skills support. So if anybody's at university, school or college and require one-to-one support, do drop us an email at team@atydyslexia.org.uk. You could also drop us any information or any message on through our website as well, if you want, if that's easier for you. We're also running Black Thrive Lambeth. So if you're Black and you live in Lambeth and you've got dyslexia, do drop us an email or do call us. Our phone number, you can find Is Dyslexia phone number everywhere if you Google it. And we're also running Create Your Future with Dyslexia, which is also funded by Equip and European Social Fund. And we've still got space if anybody's interested in coming on that workshop as well. We have an event that's happening on Thursday, April 22nd of April, and it's known as Dyslexia Your Questions Answered. Now, I'd just like to say, just before we came live on air, that event was sold. So every ticket's gone. I just thought I'd mention that. But I think there is a waiting list. So if you are interested in coming, you can always join the waiting list. And of course, our admin team will be in touch if there are spaces available. Is Dyslexia, as you know, we support people with within education, employability, and startup. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dharmesh Valand to Is Dyslexia live show. Dharmesh, welcome to our live show. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Elizabeth. I'm very honored to be on the show. So thank you very much.
And thank you very much for giving up your time to come live on our show to speak about your journey with dyslexia and how can the younger ones learn from your inspiring story that you're about to share with us, which I think is really phenomenal. Of course, I met you at the all-party parliamentary event that they had, and Nick Pulsford kindly invited me, and I was really moved with your story, and I thought, look, it would be great to have you on our live show to speak to the bigger and a wider audience, just in case there's any young person out there who's really inspired to be a doctor one day. Now, before we start, I'd like to read a little bit about you. So Dharmesh has a lived experience of dyslexia. Having been diagnosed at primary school, he graduated from his undergrad degree in biomedical science in 2016 and went on to study postgraduate degree in medicine. He's now in his final year of medical school and will be starting work as a doctor in July. How does that make you feel, Dharmesh?
I'm very, very excited. I can't wait to get started. It's a fantastic profession. And of course, I've been working for the past 5 years to start working as a doctor. But equally, there's a level of apprehension behind that. I'll be let out into the, big bad world. So, but yeah, I'm very, very excited. I look forward to getting started.
Wonderful. Now, this couldn't have been easy. I make it sound so simple and so easy. How was it like when you were diagnosed? I mean, you probably won't remember when you were diagnosed with dyslexia at the age of 8, but from the time you can remember, what was it like for you at school?
It was, you're right. I can't exactly remember when I was diagnosed, but I do remember it was almost by chance. I remember it was picked up because one of my teachers happened to watch a show about dyslexia on TV, a few days before, and then saw me in the classroom and thought, this could be dyslexia. And that's how it was picked up. So I was quite lucky in that sense. And yeah, it was strange. It was part of it was almost a relief to a certain extent, because I initially did struggle at school, and so it was very helpful. And then I got support, and actually that support made a big difference in the early part of my life, particularly in school. So yeah, I was very grateful to be diagnosed early, and very grateful for that teacher who watched the documentary.
Oh, that's really awesome, because not everybody's that lucky. I wasn't one of the lucky ones. I got diagnosed at the age of 34, so I really sort of struggled all along. And there's a lot of people I've met that got diagnosed later on in life. And I always say, what difference would it have made if I was diagnosed at 8? I mean, knowing that I have this condition would have really helped me. But the frustration and not being able to, and the to and from, and quitting jobs here, there, and everywhere because I couldn't do them. Sometimes I look back and I get a bit angry with me and with the education system, if I have to be honest. Yeah. So you were lucky to have been,
And I have to agree. I even at that age, I have a very strong memory of hitting a brick wall constantly in spelling. I remember we used to get weekly spelling tests, and I did. Let's just say it did not go well. And I remember hitting a brick wall, and I was very grateful to be diagnosed early. Very, very grateful.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, how has your studies been going? Obviously, you would have done your degree, and school. We've spoken about school. So when you got to university now, what was the massive change for you? Did you think, oh my goodness, now I'm in a big world, and how is this? Because remember, I mean, secondary school, college is completely different.
Yeah.
Studies to university. Tell me a little bit about your strategies that you've overcome some of the challenges.
Absolutely. I think the big difference between school and university is that the onus is on you to study. When you go to school or you go to college, you have set lessons, you go to set lessons, and you have the teacher sort of behind you saying, where's this homework? Have you done this? Have you covered this? But at university, the onus, almost all of it is transferred to you. So you dictate your own learning. And I think that was quite a big step change for me. I went from quite a supported environment to quite, to an environment where I was quite independent, and I had to sort of dictate, what am I going to learn? When am I going to learn it? How am I going to manage my time? So I guess there was lots of additional stuff that you have to do at university, which you probably wouldn't do at school. One of the big things I think was time management. I think I learned a lot of time management in my first year of university. I sort of quickly came to realize that if I didn't manage my time very well, I would fall behind. So, yeah.
Wow. So then you managed to do a 3-year degree, and you thought, actually, I want more of this, and went on to study further to, this doctor degree. Yeah.
So, I mean, so I really enjoyed my biomedical science degree. I sort of happened to by chance almost do my final year project with a surgeon, and then that. I'd already had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do medicine. I wanted to do something clinical, and then doing my time with a surgeon just made me think, this is actually what I want to do. And so that was the key inspiration. And then, 5 years later, here I am.
Wow. Yeah. Could you see that? Was you ever sort of sitting thinking, I know I want to be a doctor. One day I will be a doctor.
Yeah.
But the challenges along the way, what were some of the, I mean, I know you spoke about time management. What else did you think that, oh goodness me, could my dyslexia hinder me? I mean, your dyslexia, is that reading, writing, spelling and information, or how does your dyslexia affect you?
I suppose it's reading, a little bit in writing, and as I mentioned, in spelling. I think the big fear was before I started, obviously with medicine, you have to prescribe a lot and you have to be quite careful in what you're writing down. Obviously has certain implications. So I think I was initially quite scared. I was like, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to cope? Am I going to be able to learn all the big spellings in medicine? And so I think there was a lot of apprehension before I started. But if I'm being honest, I think that apprehension was very healthy, and it put me in good stead, because that meant I worked harder to not necessarily learn, but also be much more careful in what I do. Currently, if people, if I see you on the ward currently, if somebody's prescribing, they will write it down, and then that's it. They tend not to look over it again. Whereas if I ever write something down, I will look over it again and make sure it's right, before I hand it to someone else.
Yeah.
So part of it, if anything, I think it has made me, if I might say so myself, it's made me better.
Yes.
Because I'm much more, not to say that nobody else is careful, everybody is careful, but I'm probably much more careful because I have dyslexia, and I'm much more careful about it, and I'm much more aware.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, as even though you're studying to be, you are a doctor. I'm going to call you doctor again.
Thank you.
For me, I don't work with medicine. I'm always double checking to make sure I've spelled it right, to make sure I've done it right. Particularly when you're dealing with, I don't know, I'm a CEO of an organization, but at some point I have to deal with figures. I do have dyscalculia as well, so I'm triple checking to make sure that I'm doing things right. So I think the message out there is, look, you want to be a doctor and you have dyslexia, of course you can, because there are strategies in place. And of course, I'm sure when you're in your workplace, there will be some sort of support there for you as well, if you do sort of ask. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. There is lots of support out there, and there are, it's not just me who's dyslexic. I think there's a good maybe 10%, if not more, of the year who are. So that there is not, I think there's a lot of apprehension, for people thinking, am I going to be able to do it? Actually, 100% you can. And if there is anybody that is watching that is interested in doing medicine, I cannot urge you enough to apply and get involved, and definitely do. If you're interested, just go for it. If I can do it, you can definitely do it.
And I normally say that. I normally say to people, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And normally I get people say, really, it's not that simple, Elizabeth. And I'm like, I guess, it's about really how badly do you want it? How hungry are you for it? And I always say, like, live on air, that I'm going to go back to university and do my master's. If I sit here and say I'm not petrified, I'm lying to you. I am. Because one of my biggest weakness is when it comes to dissertations. I'm like, oh, this is so hard. I just can't get my head around it. Yeah. But without that, you can't really get your degree. So I'm going back to do my master's. And I always say on the live show as well, the reason why I'm sitting in this chair today was because of education. My parents were always saying, look, education is really important. And I think they're 100% right. For me personally, a black woman from being black, from a black background, that's really my key to success. I've got to learn to be able to get there. And we never stop learning, really. We carry on learning, and every day we're learning. So I guess you're right. Somebody's watching and think, I want to do medicine, but I have dyslexia. How is this going to be possible? I'll probably tell them to save this live show and keep going back to watch it, because there will be some great tips that you can share with us. So what sort of strategies do you use? Do you use things like Dragon or Clara Reid or Grammarly? What sort of strategies do you use for your learning?
I use a lot of Grammarly. I have Grammarly everywhere. And I rely on my computer massively. I take my MacBook Pro everywhere. And it comes around with me absolutely everywhere, and I take lots of notes using it. I also, obviously currently it's different because we're doing lectures online, but when I was doing lectures in the big lecture halls, I would record the lectures. I would get a dictaphone, I would record the lectures themselves, because what I struggled with doing was listening to the lecture and then writing all the notes down, because they'd be, in an hour, they might be going through 60, 80 slides sometimes, there was that much to cover.
Yeah.
So in the end, what I started to do was record the lecture and just listen instead of writing any notes. And I would go back, come home, listen to the lecture again. If I missed anything, I would put in the notes. And that helped me a lot. In the end, I think the dictaphone made a big difference. And I think if I can suggest anything, is get a dictaphone if you're ever studying medicine or ever doing any other university degree. I think that made a big difference. The other thing I also very quickly noticed is knowing my learning style made a big difference for me. And I think initially I was sort of doing everything and anything, to try and learn. But when I focused what I was doing and sort of, because I learned by doing things. So when I started, actively doing that, I learned a lot more better, and I did a lot better. But the other thing I would also add is if anyone's listening and saying, "Oh, I know my learning style," what I would say is take that one step further and adapt your learning style to what you're trying to achieve. So one of the big things in my first degree was that we would do essays as part of the exam. So in the exam, you get an hour, or you get 2 hours actually, to do 4 essays, right? But in medical school currently, we would do multiple choice questions. So it's 2 very different exam formats. And in my first degree, I was making lots of mind maps, for the essays. And then when I got to medical school, I was continuing doing those mind maps. But actually, the exam format was so much different, they just did not work. So then I started making flashcards, and that made every bit of difference at medical school. So I was adapting my learning style to what I was being examined on, or actually what I was learning, rather than just doing what I was doing before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I normally say, do you know what, if you really want it, you go out there and you get it. I'm sure there are many dyslexics who are doctors that have done it. Dyslexia affects all walks of life. It's not just a particular group or particular type of people. It just affects all walks of life, and the support is 100% there. I agree with you. That's how I managed to do my degree, and that's how I managed to do my professional certificate in education. And I'm going to keep going because I want that doctor in front of my name one day. So,
and I'm definitely sure you will get it. I am 100% sure.
I'll be the first doctor in my family, and I desperately want it. So I think I'm going to have to keep going until I get that. That's my motivation anyway. And my specialism is more into, I want to find out more about dyslexia and further more and more research, because if I must admit, it did hold me back for so many years until I found the help I need. And I thought, wow, the whole world needs to know about this. And that's how A2I Dyslexia was set up. It's not easy. If I sit here and tell you I'm lying to you, I remember the first year at university, I thought, right, that's it, I've had enough, I'm going to give up. But it was always, I was always one to keep giving up. But this was a point in my life where I thought, I can't give up. You can't keep running away. You've got to face your demons and you've got to do it. And I'm so glad I stuck at uni for 3 years and did my teaching for another year and hope to do more, really. Keep going. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. Now, I just want to say that if anybody's joined us this evening, we're in London, so I can't say this evening. If you've joined us, then of course we're speaking this evening with Dharmesh, and we're talking about studying medicine with dyslexia. And Dharmesh was literally just telling us some of the strategies that he used at university to overcome his dyslexia. Now, Dharmesh, what advice do you have for any viewers who are interested in career in medicine? You probably might have covered some of that already, but I just thought, I'll ask you that anyway.
Absolutely. I think, as I mentioned earlier, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. And if there's anyone listening, I apply. Honestly, there's no way two ways about it, and you should not second guess it. I think I initially, when I applied, I was quite scared, but as I said, it was misplaced. And actually, there is plenty of support at medical school. There's lots of tutors, and even within the university system, there is plenty of support. You just need to go out and find the support. And you can, if you get in touch with your tutors, they are very, certainly the tutors that I've had here have been fantastic, and they've been very, very helpful. So, as I said, definitely apply. But if you are thinking of applying, prepare, because you do have to sit certain exams to apply initially, and then you need to get a certain mark to. I won't bore you to get into too much detail of that, but you have to achieve a certain score to be able to apply, to be eligible, and certain medical schools will have different scores that they will accept. So there is certainly exams involved to apply to medical school. But again, even with those exams, there is plenty of support out there. And all of them will, if you've got any reasonable adjustments at school, the same reasonable adjustments will apply for those exams as well. And I'm not going to lie, as you've said, there is a lot of hard work involved, but that's fine. And I think if you really, really want it, there should be absolutely nothing holding you back. And I would encourage anyone to, if you're really considering it, is to get work experience. So go onto a ward, go to a GP practice, see what medicine's like day to day. And actually, that's one of the big things that medical schools will want to look for is has this person been onto an actual ward? Have they seen what medicine is in a GP practice and things? So certainly would recommend it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. That's really awesome. Now, I'm just going to go to our studio manager just to see if there's any questions for us. If anyone's joined us and if they might have a burning question for either Dharmesh or myself, they can drop the comments right there. And then, of course, Dharmesh or myself will be able to answer that. If I don't know the answer, I'm sure someone we know might have the answer for you. But today's show is absolutely phenomenal. And we are speaking to Dharmesh Valand, who is speaking to us about studying with medicine. Right. So I guess there may not be any comments, and that's okay. Sometimes people just like to just watch in comfort and maybe not sort of get involved in questions as such. Now, Dharmesh, I want to speak to you about being stigmatized with dyslexia, for example. What is that like within the Indian community? How is dyslexia viewed?
I think initially when I was growing up into the community, I think there is an element there. I think part of it was just but I think that things are changing over time. People are learning more and more about dyslexia. I think initially when I was growing up, early 90s, I'd probably be showing my age now. I think I don't think there was the same understanding that there is today. But I think you're right that there is an element of stigma, and I think it was not the most helpful.
Yeah. Do you think more and more people speak about dyslexia now than they did many years ago? I mean, is it a discussion around the dining table? I know within my community it isn't.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I guess for me, it's maybe slightly different because I am dyslexic, and I've always been dyslexic for all of my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I have always brought it up around the dinner table. But yeah, I just not sure that there is the same in maybe other households. I don't think there's the same level of understanding there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So how did you overcome that barrier then? Were your parents really supportive? Obviously, you were diagnosed at 8. As a parent, sometimes the shock of the whole thing is like, really? And then you as a parent have to go away and sort of research about the condition itself. So your parents, how have they supported you? And, you know, what makes them very unique, maybe? Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think there was certainly a period of processing, as there is always with these things, and I think there was always this apprehension of actually what does this mean, because I don't think they'd ever, you know, they hadn't heard of it before, which is fair enough. That's fine. But yeah, as you've said, so they went away and sort of looked into it and, you know, got more understanding. And actually, you know, once they sort of came on board, that there was a real change. I think coming on board made a big difference to me, and I think that was very helpful. And, you know, they have been helpful. You know, they have been supportive since then. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great. And I think with support from parents, carers, it makes such a huge difference, honestly.
Yeah.
There are some families that may be in denial because they're just, it will be a shock to one if you think that all of a sudden, you know, your child is struggling at school, or even as an adult, you're struggling. And then you think, what is wrong with me? And then you go for an assessment and all of a sudden you've got this label. It's difficult to kind of comprehend with that and then to accept and then to move on. I know when I was diagnosed, I was like, no way, there is absolutely nothing wrong with me, you know. And I was in denial for a very, very long time until my back was against the wall. And it's like, look, either you accept this or you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And if you really want to finish your education, you're going to have to go for help. And that day was the turnaround for me. And as a result, I'm sitting here today, you know, with running this organization as well as trying to embark on my studies. So, you know,
I think you're 100% right. And to be honest with you, I think I think I was probably in denial initially as well. I was like, are you sure? Are you sure I talk about the same person?
Yeah.
But actually, I think I remember when I actually got the support in school, and I saw what the difference it made, and I think that was the big turning point for me, you know, and me getting on board as well. So I think you're right. I think it's natural that there is an element of denial, but I think once you accept it and move on, and see the difference that the support can make, I think you're right.
Fantastic. And I just want to say, if anybody's joined us, or any viewers who have joined us and watching at the moment, if you are studying and you feel like you're really banging your head against brick wall and you're like, I cannot do this, reach out to your student support unit. I think that's what they call them, student support. Yeah. Go and speak to someone, because whether it's dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, you know, visual stress, autism, ADHD, whatever it might be, please go and get that help. Because once you've got the help, like what I'm speaking to Dharmesh, and he's totally agreeing with me, the world's your oyster. Because it's not just university or school or college, it's where you might struggle. Remember, we're finished and we're going into the employment, and you still have to read and write and spell. You still have to do some kind of, you know, task to do with admin. And that's the point where you would wish you went for the support. And I know when I got my dyslexia assessment, you know, I went into my first job and I showed them this, although the organization I worked for at the time decided that, look, you better go for another assessment. Just to, I don't know why some employers feel that you leave school and dyslexia disappears. It doesn't. It stays with you forever. So I did go for the second assessment, and I think it came out worse. That's when dyspraxia was picked up, to be honest. Yeah. And I've never looked back. And I normally, you know, I just want to say to anyone who's watching right now, you know, whether you feel like, oh my goodness, this cannot be me. Dyslexia is genetic. You know, you can, you know, get it from your parents or grandparents or whoever they might be. It might skip a generation. I mean, I'm not an expert as in neuroscience, but I do understand that it might skip a generation, and, you know, one member of the family might get this condition. And the worst thing one can do is just ignore it and hope that that child will catch up, or you as an adult, you know, I'm going to grow out of it and catch up. You don't grow out of it. I mean, Dharmesh, you and I know, you know, there's no pill that dyslexia, by the way. Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Well, I'll be the first. We can try it. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm just going to go to my third point now. What are your 3 top managing tips for people in terms of time management effectively for students?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing I think I mentioned earlier is my calendar and my reminders. My life is stored in my calendar and in my reminders. So I've and part of that stems from something I learned from school. Somebody once said to me, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that has always been something that I've kept in my life. I've always planned ahead. I've always, there'll always be blocks of time to do this. And there's always a to-do list to do this, and this. And I think if you've got it written down, you can quickly see what there is and what there isn't to do, and you can always add things or always take things off. And the big thing is you never miss anything, because I think it's easy to just say, "Oh yeah, I'll remember to do that," and sometimes you just forget. And the other thing I would also say is set deadlines. Set deadlines for doing a certain task. Quick, because there's a lot to do at university, and you have to quickly learn to time manage. And you also have to learn to, because you have the whole day to do whatever you want. So if you have a task, you can use the whole day to do that task. But then that means you lose the day, if that makes sense. But so if you've thought about, okay, so I need to write this essay, and it should take me 2 hours, and so block off that 2 hours and do it in the 2 hours. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll just end up using the whole day to write one essay, for example. And the other tip I would say is schedule regular breaks for that. Because what quickly can happen is if you've got a to-do list of 20, 30 things to do in a day, you'll end up using your own time. You'll end up using the time that you need to recharge your batteries. And I've certainly become, I've certainly been a victim of that, So I ended up, and you end up not working at your best potential if you don't take regular breaks. So I would recommend that you would factor in regular breaks. So yeah, those are my 3 top tips.
Wonderful. Now, one thing, I don't know if you're the same, Dharmesh, but one thing as a dyslexic for me is procrastination. I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah. How do we overcome that? I mean, I know that's one dyslexic speaking to another dyslexic. How do you overcome that procrastination?
That's a good question.
Well, that's not deliberate, is it? Yeah. I mean, you and I know we don't deliberately want to put it off. Yeah.
So that's something I've learned is sort of the schedule in a break to switch your mind off and do something, watch a YouTube video for something else, and then that break I would also I would also set a deadline. So I'll say I'm going to have a break for 30 minutes, and I'm going to do whatever it is I want to, and then come back and finish this task. Because I think you're right, you can quite quickly procrastinate, and you can be watching, you can start YouTube and then you're still there come evening.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes, and I think for me as well, is how do I start? So for example, the whole room have to be total silence. And then I've got to be on my own, and I've got to get on with it. Because if a pin drops, it's like, what was that about? And I'm looking around me. I'm easily distracted. Very easily distracted. So it's about focusing and knowing that. I think when I was doing my degree, it was the end goal. I have to graduate, and I have to throw that hat in the air. We throw it in the air, how to do it. So I thought, I've got to stay to the end to be able to do that. And I did. I mean, it was one struggle, but I did it. I did it, and I sit here today to tell anyone who's watching this, no matter what your dreams are, if it's education, go for it. Because it will open so many doors for you. I know Dharmesh and I, on this live show, we're making it sound easy. I would honestly say there is nothing really that's easy in life. Everything is, what's the word I'm looking for? You will sort of struggle with everything in the beginning. But once you get going, and if you can see that light under that tunnel, do it, because it's worthwhile. you won't regret it.
No.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely nothing worth doing it ever comes easy. If so absolutely agree.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So again, I'll go to my producer just to see if there's any comments for us. If there are comments, of course, we'll share it, and we're more than happy to answer those. If there is no comments, then no problem at all, because sometimes people just like to watch and rather than asking questions along the way as well. But it's been really amazing and phenomenal having you on our live show. And what advice do you have for your younger self?
That's a very good question. What advice do I have for I think not being scared. I think initially when I came into medicine, and even actually going to university, I was quite apprehensive. I was worried, am I going to be able to cope? Am I going to be able to, will I be able to keep up with the work? Will I be able to get through exams? So I think part of it was good to a certain extent, because that almost kept me motivated to keep doing things and keep working hard and making sure I was doing the things I should have been doing. But yeah, not be as scared or have been apprehensive to even apply to medical school. So yeah, that's what I would say. Wonderful.
So if anybody's joined us now, I mean, some people do join late, wherever you're joining from. We're speaking today to Dharmesh Valand, who is a medical student, soon to be a doctor, if I can use that word. And he's got dyslexia. And today we're speaking to him about the strategies he's used to study for what it'll be 8 years in total, would it? Because 3 years.
That's right. Yeah, 8 years. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. 8 years in total. You've never had no breaks in between. It's just been straight for 8 years.
No, straight. I graduated a week before I started medical school. So the graduation ceremony was a week before I started.
Yeah, I think it's worth it. It's 8 years well spent, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, I have loved every second of it. I cannot recommend it enough. It has been a massive eye-opener. I've learned lots of things at medical school, and I was always interested in biology. And obviously, I on a daily basis, I'm blown away about the things I learn about the human body. So absolutely, yeah, it's been fantastic. Awesome. I would not change it for anything else.
Do you know what? The more I speak to you, the more it's like, I can't wait to start my studies now. I'm really ready to go, because I'm just so fascinated to find out. I mean, the area I'm going into is more to do with dyslexia, and I want to find out more and more, because when I was hit with this condition, I can say when I was hit with it, because I was like, really? What's this? Yeah. And then, of course, my brain works so differently from everyone else. The struggles are real, Dharmesh. It is proper real. I'm in the office and where do you begin? Where do you start? Can I focus on one thing at a time? And it just becomes so chaotic. And I always say, why can't I do emails multicolors? So you know that you've done blue and you're moving on to green. All the emails are black and white. Like, which one have I answered? I can't find Zoom links and so forth. It becomes really, really overwhelming. And but because I've got this passion to learn more, the only way I'm going to know it is by going back into education. And I just want to help so many people who've got dyslexia. I want to be an inspiration to many, just like you are, Dharmesh. And
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Oh, bless you. It's by going back to study. We just had a message from Heather. She's a psychologist. She's not dyslexic, no. And she said, amazing, well done, Dharmesh. And I think she had a message earlier. She said, a very insightful conversation. Wonderful conversation. Insightful is what she's put there. And again, yeah, and I'm sure Dr. Heather would have studied for many, many years to get to where she is. But the message I want to get across to our viewers, she said that you were both inspirational. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brove. We want to say thank you for actually saying that, because we have to be the role models for the next generation, and coming out publicly to speak about dyslexia for me was not one of the most, I couldn't say that the first day I broke the news and it was on social media, I couldn't say that I was like, it was well thought about. It was well planned. It was like, how will people look at me? How will people view me? I was always worried about what people would say. And now I live dyslexia and I breathe dyslexia. Everything. It's about, the minute I see the word dyslexia somewhere, I'm like, let's go and find out what this is about. And hopefully, you know, I'm making a difference in someone's life. HY Dyslexia, we do have our podcast, we have our live shows, we have events, we have workshops, you know, we have one-to-one support. Most of these things we do are free. We do dyslexia assessment, and I forgot to mention this actually. For the Black Thrive program, you get free dyslexia assessment if you live in Lambeth. So if you're Black and you live in Lambeth, you get that for free. Now, normally that would be £420. We're giving it for free. So I normally say to people, join the workshop if you can. It finishes in July. We don't really have long to go. And it's really for the purpose of education if one wants to go back. And I know that, Dharmesh, can you imagine if you didn't have your dyslexia assessment? What would life have been for you, do you reckon?
I think it would have been very, very different. I think I think I would have struggled a lot initially at school, and I think I would have. I don't think I would have made it as far as I've made it. I'd certainly be very honest in saying that. I think it made a world of difference, and I think actually. And the fact that I know I've got dyslexia and I've got lots of coping mechanisms, but actually now that I know I have dyslexia, you might have a very similar experience. Is I do things without knowing about it, without actually thinking about any, doing them, So it has made a massive difference.
Yeah. So do you think there's any shame having dyslexia? Do you
Absolutely not. No. I do. I proudly tell everyone that I'm dyslexic, and I don't think there's ever a shame. And I think actually, certainly in my experience of university and medical school as a whole, I think everyone has been very, very receptive. Everyone has been very interested in what dyslexia is, and actually, you'd be surprised. A lot of people know exactly what they'll know exactly what it means, and they are very interested and they are very supportive.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, if I could go to Wembley Stadium with the whole place packed with billions of people, I'd love to stand on the stage and say, do you know what? I've got dyslexia and I'm very proud. And guess what? Anybody who's got dyslexia, go and get yourself assessed, because the help that you get is phenomenal. And I couldn't keep saying that, I'd say that everywhere I go. And I just feel that sometimes people say to me, you can go around the world telling people about how proud you are as a dyslexic because you've made it. Those that haven't made it, but remember, I was at those that haven't made it, and I'm not a millionaire. I can sit here and tell you that I'm not, far from it. But one thing I do know is that the support and the help I need is available. And I went out there and I got it. And I will never stop, going for the help I need until I don't think anyone will ever turn around and say to you, sorry, I can't help you. It's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I know some people have had really terrible experiences at university, but I mean, I went into uni with a diagnosis. No, that's not right. I went into the workplace with a diagnosis, but university is where the dyslexia was picked up, which has been my key to success. And I will never stop saying thank you to Dr. Gloria Gordon, who referred me to the Student Support Unit. She's the reason why I sit here today. Yeah. So that brings us to the end of our show. I want to say thank you very much for joining us. Unless you've got the final want to say to anyone before we go, what do you want to say? Please go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, you broke up, but I really just want to say thank you very much for having me. I have been inspired to learn more about your story, so thank you very much for having me.
And thank you to our viewers for watching us, from wherever you are that you watched us today. Thank you to our funders, the Education Skills Funding Agency and the London community. And a very, very big thank you to Dharmesh and to our producer, Richard, who's in the background coordinating all this. Now, we'll see you next week, same time, same place, with a different topic. Bye-bye for now.